Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Q&A live. My name is Shakina, and I'm in the OET education team. I'm here to answer all of your OET questions live on air. So the format of this session is really, really simple. If you've got a question that you would like us to answer, put it in the comment section on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you are joining from. And I'm going to pick up questions as they come in to answer live. And these sessions are unique because I don't know what questions you're going to ask me. And so I will do my best to answer as many as possible and get to as many as possible. So we're just getting warmed up. I can see a few hellos there in the chat. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on Facebook. And this session is, like I said, sort of a free, scripted session. Uh, I mean, it's not a scripted session, so the agenda is pretty much up to you. What you would like to ask us, we will answer that during the session. There's no such thing as a silly question. Whatever question you have, whether it's related to any of the subtests or if it's a preparation advice in general, whatever's top of mind, whatever has been bothering you, we would love to hear your question, and um, I'll do my best to answer them. So, a few hellos coming through in the chat. Please do say hello and also post in your questions or comments. I'm going to speak a little bit about one of our really useful and helpful resources if you are someone who's already started your OET preparation. This is our graded samples booklet. Tell me in chat if you have used our graded samples booklet before or if you've heard of it. So, yes or no, have you used our graded samples before? I'll give you a few seconds to answer. So, some of you saying no. All right. So, I would highly recommend this resource, and the link is coming through in chat right now. Bella asking, is it free? Yes, it is absolutely free. And it's in the form of a PDF that you can download. And I've just put in the chat the link to the page where you'll find the resource, the PDFs that I mentioned. There are two PDFs, one for writing and one for speaking, and in it you'll find 30 samples, 30 writing and 30 speaking samples that have been graded by assessors, and where assessors have given comments on the speaking role play or the letter, whatever it is, and sort of through those comments, you can understand what the strengths of the letter were, or the role play were, and what areas where they could improve were. And this is a really good way of looking at and preparing for your writing and speaking, because you're essentially looking at what things the assessors are praising, and therefore trying to see if your writing or your speaking sort of has those same things that they're praising, and where you can use the areas of improvement to reflect on your own to see if you need to improve in those areas as well. Of course, the samples aren't templates to copy, but they are really useful in understanding what a grade B looks like, if that's what you're aiming for. And so I highly recommend downloading those booklets and going through them. There's also some ideas for how you can use those booklets in your self study. I know a lot of you do prepare by your sort of, you you self study. So there are some suggested activities that you can do, and in those booklets as well. And of course, they're absolutely free of cost. So, though that was a little bit about the graded samples booklets, and I hope that you'll find that resource helpful. All right. Um, I've got a question here from Tahir who's joined us on Facebook, and Tahir is asking, is there any link where I can find common OET listening words? And of course, Tahir, I think you're referring to especially listening part A, where you listen to a consultation where the patient does most of the talking, and in the part A task. You need to fill in gaps in the healthcare professional's notes, based on what the patient has just said. Now, if you think about it, so there, just to answer your question very quickly, there's no link or uh, common words list of common words, but these are all words that you would have come across in your healthcare practice. They're very, very common words. And if you think about it, the kinds of things the types of words are all things, like I said, you've come across. So when a healthcare professional is talking to a patient during a consultation, if they want to find out, usually when they're trying to find out more about the patient's problems, they talk about similar things. So you'll hear patients talk about symptoms. So yes, words related to symptoms, you could study those. They talk about triggers, things that trigger their allergies or their problem. Sometimes they can talk about home remedies that they've taken, or they can talk about where pain is located in the body, what the pain feels like. So words related to pain. If you think about it, just make a list of all of the kinds of things you expect to hear patients talk about in these sorts of consultations, and you'll get a sort of a list of topics that you can go and explore more words related to them and make your own list. But like I said, these are all words that you would have come across when you are, when you're talking to patients about their problems. So moving on, I'm going to pick up the next question. All right, so I've got a question here from KM Pradeepan on YouTube asking, is there any technique to get a 400 in writing? I always end up with a 390. So yes, there are some programs or regulators who require a 400 in writing. That is an OETB. For example, the foundation program in the UK that doctors apply to is one example of that. Now, there's no magic technique or template to get a 400 score. Remember that typically a grade B, to achieve a grade B, you need to get 2 out of 3 in purpose and a minimum of 5 in the rest of the criteria. So if you think about your own writing from the perspective of the criteria and look at where your strengths and weaknesses are, that's where you can sort of understand where you can improve. One of the graded samples booklet that I just shared is a great resource that can help you understand what one of these, what a grade B looks like. There are samples with an A as well. So you could look at those as well. And like I said, paying attention to the criteria, very careful attention to the criteria, making sure you're meeting um, all of those uh, the descriptors in the higher bands of the criteria. Um, for example, purpose is one area where we know that candidates um, often can really make improvements in their writing. So, having a very clear idea of the purpose, you need to go beyond a generic refer or transfer discharge sort of approach and really understand the unique purpose of the case, no, of the case in front of you, and make sure that you've articulated that clearly in your letter, and all parts of purpose. So not just making it clear in the introduction, but also expanding it later towards the end, for example. So that's one example of a criterion that you can pay more attention to in sort of understanding what the criterion is asking. I've recommended the graded samples booklet. There's also our writing guide that you can reference. That is an excellent resource as well. And I'm going to put the link in chat now. The writing guide is on our website, oet.com, on our ready page that is dedicated to writing. So you once you scroll down that page, you'll be able to find the writing guide there. All right, I've got, I can see a question here from Mercy. Mercy is asking or saying that the challenge is in completing reading part A. So that is a challenging part of the reading test, and that's a lot of the times because of the time limit that you have. There's the pressure there, which is quite natural. If when I do take a reading part A, just for practice or just to see what it's like, sometimes I do find it, it's difficult to ignore that there's a clock ticking in the background. So I'm going to put up some tips for you, and hopefully these will help. So one of the things that we always tell candidates is that, or we encourage candidates to do, is to go through the questions in order. And the reason for this is because the questions are designed in such a way that the first set of questions help you understand very broadly what the four texts are about. They'll help you understand whether text A is a dosage chart, for example, whether text B is a treatment pathway, and sort of getting this sense of what the texts are about will activate sort of your brain, because your brain already sort of knows what to expect when it sees a dosage chart, what kind of information might be in a treatment pathway. So the first set of questions sort of activates that part of your brain, if I may say so. So, and then the next set of questions look at more specific information within those texts and that you need to locate. So, going through the questions in order is a really helpful way to kind of it might take a bit of time to get used to doing it this way, if you've not done it this way before, but you'll see with time you'll get better, and it might actually help you speed up the process of answering those questions. The second tip is to use text features to quickly find answers. Now, reading part A, you don't need to read every word. You don't need to read from left to right. If you are an efficient reader, you find your eyes are going all over looking for features of the text. So, looking at headings, looking at subheadings, bullet points, any words in bold, If you have a table, looking at the row headings, the column headings, to find what what they're about, and then using that to zone in on the answer on the answer. So use text features. Don't read every word. Don't read from left to right. The third point, which is sort of more related to spelling, but is important because in reading part A, your spelling needs to be 100% accurate. And we do know that oftentimes people have found the right answer, but they haven't copied the answer correctly. And they end up losing or wasting those marks. So make sure you spend a couple of extra seconds checking that your spelling is 100% accurate. And the last step, especially if you're worried about time, is might be contrary to what you know to your feelings. So the last step is not to panic about time. Now, this is because um, the time limit in reading part A is there for a reason. It's because when you are reading these sorts of texts on a busy ward, um, you don't have all the time in the world. A patient could be in front of you and you need to look up something. So the time limit is something that really is that you probably already, when you read these sorts of things in real life, already sort of you're aware of. So if you find it hard not to think about time, then remove the time from your practice. So don't time yourself to 15 minutes when you're solving or doing a reading part A. Just do it. See, observe yourself, see what skills you're using, how you're using those skills, and then slowly bring down the time to the 15 minutes. So work your way down to doing it in 15 minutes. And you'll find that once you understand the skills you need to use, you'll find that you're able to really not, so time doesn't really become, it is a factor, of course, there's no denying that, but it doesn't sort of become the only thing that you're worried about. All right, so I'm just taking those tips off and back to the questions. Thank you for all of your questions. There's some really good questions coming in. All right, I've got a question here from Callan Hangi on YouTube saying, I've scored 250 in OET writing and I need 300. Will my score change if I apply for remarking? So, with remarking, you need to remember that there could be one of three things that happen to your score. The first is that your score could stay the same. The second is, of course, that it could, you could get a higher score. And the third is that your score could go lower. So, any one of these three things could happen. Now, having said that, remember that when you do give in your paper for remarking, so you request remarking within 72 hours of having received your results. That's the time limit within which you must submit for remarking. Your paper or your role play goes in to be marked by different assessors than the assessors who marked your letter or your role play the first time round. The assessors use the criteria, they use marking guide, and these are assessors that have been that are monitored regularly. They're sort of checked to make sure that they're marking according to standard. After they've marked your paper, it then goes off to the University of Cambridge, where it is, where it undergoes different analyses, and then those marks come back to us where they're checked and then released to you. And so, in explaining this, what I'm trying to say is that the process is quite rigorous. The first time round for having, for those grades, for those marks that you have received, and equally, it's just the same the second time around. So generally, I wouldn't expect your marks to change, and especially in your specific case, from a 250 to a 300, you know that's a big difference. And so perhaps, while the choice is absolutely yours, it's a good idea perhaps to take a few steps back and think about areas that you think you may have areas that you may have not done so well in your test, and then also think about how you could improve your writing in general. Some of the resources that I mentioned earlier, so the writing guide and the graded sample booklets, are great resources if you need to improve your score in writing. So I would recommend using those resources um, to prepare for for your test. Right. Um, right. So I'm just looking at some of the questions that have come in. Um, Great questions coming in, by the way. And I'm just going to. Right. Um, I've got one more question about remarking, so I'm just going to put that up. So Bella asking, how does the remarking system work? Is it allowed for only one part? Yes. So as I explained before, you need to submit a remarking request. In that request, you would indicate which papers you want remarked, and you submit that request within 72 hours of having received your results. Um, I'm just putting into the chat the remarking policy for some of you, just to have a look at. It's a short article that will tell you what the process is like, and also give you an idea of the time frame. Like I mentioned, 72 hours, and also fees and the outcomes. All right. Okay, I have got a question here from Wifa on YouTube, who says, Upper intermediate is my level. Can I pass the OET test? This is the nursing sub-test. So, Wakaf, it's excellent, first of all, that you have sort of taken the trouble to understand what your current language level is. And that's an excellent place to start, is to understand your current language level and how far it is from your desired score. Now, most regulators accept grade B, which is an advanced level of English, and upper intermediate is quite close to that. So while yes, you can definitely, given that you put in the time and the study, and I'm going to just explain that in a minute, you have a good chance of passing. Now, what do I mean? I said, given that you give in time for study. Now, so you have two types of skills that you need to work on when you're thinking about preparing for OET. One is your language skills. Um, so your reading, writing, speaking, your listening. So things like your grammar, your vocabulary, how good you are at understanding different accents, um, how efficient you are at reading, how you can read different sorts of texts in the right way. All of those are your language skills. So obviously, to work up from that upper intermediate level to the more advanced level, you would need to put in that study. The second type of skills are your test taking skills. So, test taking skills are skills like managing your time in the OET test, knowing how to answer multiple choice questions, understanding of the format and the criteria. Those are your test taking skills. And to be successful in OET, you need both. So you need to think about where you need to work on and then study in that way. Now, if you do a lot of practice tests, if that's your main method of study, that means you're really improving your test taking skills. But if you want to improve your language skills, and that is where you'll see the most difference in your score, you'll need to do language studies. So, reading more, listening more to different sorts of things that you would find in the test, reading, articles of general medical interest, listening to podcasts, and sort of really expanding your English is where you'll see your language skills improving. So, those are things that you can take into consideration, reflect, and then understand where you are. And then a final thing to take into consideration is also how much time you have in hand. So obviously, it will take some time to build up your level. It's a skill, so it's something that you need to practice every day, and to get better at. Uh, get better at it, you need to work on it every day, and it takes time. So if you've got lots of time, you can do it in a shorter amount of time and be ready. But if you're working full time, for example, and you've got lots of different commitments, then you need to factor that in and give yourself a little bit more time to be ready to take the test. So hopefully, taking all of those considerations, you'll be able to make more informed choice about when to take your test. All right, I've got a question here from Seema on YouTube saying, how does OET calculate the score of the reading and listening subtests? Do they calculate each part or the total correct marks? So, reading and listening, you have a total of 42 questions, and each question is worth 1 mark. And the way that um, you know the way that it is calculated is based on the total marks that you obtain in in each subtest. Now, for test takers who want to achieve a grade B, we recommend that you score between 30 and 32 at least in your practice tests. And that should give you a good idea of whether you're on the right track to achieving a grade B. Now, I've said practice tests. So this means the practice tests that I'm referring to are practice tests that are on the official OET website. I'm not referring to practice tests that you might find on social media. Sometimes you could achieve a minimum of 30 on those practice tests, but the problem with those tests is that sometimes the types of questions that are there don't reflect the real test accurately. They could be easier, they might be unnecessarily difficult, or they might focus on a skill that is not tested in OET. So you need to keep that in mind and make sure you're using official practice tests when you want to sort of get that sense of whether you're on the right track to a grade B. All right. I am just scrolling down to some newer questions. All right, so I've got a question here again from KM Pradeepan, who's saying that they scored 480 in this face-to-face test, but while doing the online test, they scored lower because of a possible interlocutor issue. All right, so you know, sorry to hear that your test day experience hasn't really been, what you expected. If you do find that there are in any case where you are not happy with any aspect related to your test experience, we would encourage you to report it to us using the complaints form on our website, because we're very interested in hearing your feedback, and especially if there's something that you weren't happy with. So I would encourage you to do that. There is, of course, a time limit within which you need to fill the complaints form. But like I said, it is something that we're very interested in. I would like to reassure you, of course, that the interlocutor's performance doesn't affect your grade, because the assessors are are listening to you, and assessing how you have performed, and sort of taking into consideration all of these skills that you've used in both of your role plays. So just like to reassure you about that. And for and for the future, please do use the complaints form that's on our website. Okay, I've got a question here from Seema, again on YouTube, saying in the question it asks how much percent, but can we write the percentage in the answer? Now, I think what you're asking is, if the question asks you, what is the percentage, what's the percent of uh, dash, what do you write in the answer? And because the question is um, the so the, sorry, I mean, if the question asks you what percentage of something, what do you write in the answer? Do you write the symbol or not? So yes, you would write the symbol. That is because the symbol signifies a percent, which is different. And I'm going to put into chat a really great video that explains this, with an example related to a real test. So my example wasn't great, but there's a really good example using one of the sample tests that you'll find in this video. The name of the video is How to Succeed um, in Reading Part A, and it goes through all of the common mistakes that candidates make in reading Part A, and also covers this question that you've answered, as I said, with a really good example. Um, I'm just looking at some newer questions. I've got a question here from Deborah on YouTube saying, will marks be deducted if the speaking tasks aren't completed within the 5 minutes? So, first of all, Deborah, you are marked according to a criteria in the speaking subtest. You want and your performance in these criteria. So the two sets of criteria are linguistic criteria and your clinical communication criteria. I'm going to post into chat our speaking guides, which cover each of these criteria in more detail. But essentially, your linguistic criteria is looking at your language, like your fluency, your pronunciation, um, whether that's clear or not, um, and so on. And then your clinical communication criteria is looking at your communication skills. So things that you would need in when you're interacting with patients in a patient-centered way. So, for example, expressing empathy, questioning skills, effective questioning skills, and those sorts of things. So the way that the criteria work is that you have bands for each of the criteria, and the assessors mark according to where what your performance looks like, or where uh, or what your performance evidences according to those bands. So there's no you won't lose marks. In fact, you don't not completing the tasks, all of the tasks on the roll card, doesn't negatively or in any way impact your score if you have carried out the conversation in a patient centered way. So the tasks are there as a guide. They constitute a logical flow of the conversation, but um, nothing in the criteria says that you must complete all of them. Now, obviously, this, going completely off topic or going very much away from those tasks or those guides could impact your score. But, generally, if you're sticking to them and trying to carry out the conversation in a patient-centered way, that should not impact your score in any way. Um, all right, I've got a question here from um, Sandra on YouTube saying that she's done her speaking test on Monday, which was a computer-based test, and um, the rest of the subtests, listening, reading, and writing, will be on the 29th. Currently, practice test marks average 30 to 35. Do you have any tips for me? So that's excellent that you have been, consistently getting those marks. So the first thing that I'd like to say is, of course, that these are the last few days leading up to your test. One of the things that we recommend candidates do during the last few days is perhaps to create a personal checklist of things that you know that you need to pay attention to in each of the subtests. So, for example, with writing. If you know that you're generally, messing up your tenses a little bit, or if you sometimes are very hasty with reading the case notes, and then when your 40 minutes starts, you want to start writing the answer very quickly, and so you miss out on paying attention to the purpose in the case notes. You know that about yourself. um, so making a checklist just to sort of be more aware of these things will help, because these are things that, when you have a few minutes left, you can just double check to make sure that you haven't lost any marks um, for those things. So making a personal checklist is a great idea. It'll help you sort of review what you've done so far as well. And then, of course, you are taking a computer based test. So, a couple of days before the test, making sure that you know your venue, where it is, making sure that you arrive there on time and how you plan to get there. And you've packed everything, even thinking about having enough rest the previous day, having something to eat, if that's something you need. So making sure of all of those sorts of practical things is a good way to, is really helpful um, during the last few days, because you want to reach there very sort of as calm as possible, and not having to worry about things that aren't related to your performance, your language ability. So those would be my two tips. All right. So got quite a few questions as well. Thank you for all of your questions, and those of you who joined us, welcome. It's not too late. You can still put in your questions in chat. All right. So we've got a question here from Dilki on Facebook, asking, can we write answers that exceed the answer space? So Dilki, in your reading and your listening subtests, I would encourage you to write within the answer space, just so that it's clear to the assessors, what the answers are. Now, that is not to say you cannot write. Of course, if you're using very clear signals to the assessors, um, and it's clear to them that that this letter is part of your answer, then that is acceptable. So, um, yes, you can, but it's really, really important to make sure that you do your best to present your answers clearly to the assessors. So, spending some extra time practicing that and making sure you've got that clear is a good idea. And of course, the reading and the space that you've been given in the question paper um, is enough. It's ample. That has been taken into account, so you shouldn't worry too much about that. But yes, do make sure if there's anything like that, that you are clearly indicating it to the assessors, and your final answer is clear. There's no questions about it. All right. Anna on Facebook saying, is it possible to have a repeated conversation exam, or is it always going to be different? I've been practicing a lot. And then I think the second part of your question is, you're struggling in reading. So, with the first part of your question, I've taken it to be a speaking test. Is it possible to have a repeated speaking test? So, no, the situations that you encounter in your speaking test will all be different. And that is not to, get you worried. Remember that thinking about your profession, all of the speaking topics that you encounter in any of the test sittings that you choose are all going to be typical situations for your profession. They're not going to be unique or very rare scenarios. They're all going to be very typical for your profession. Now, having said that, preparing for your speaking test, thinking about types of conversations and you know um, types of conversations will actually is not a really helpful approach, because like I said, you'll encounter different situations. So rather than focusing on the types, focus on the criteria, the clinical communication criteria and the linguistic criteria, and focus on how you can demonstrate those skills in your role plays. And so I'm going to just put into chat one of our free preparation resources. It's an excellent course called the Speaking Booster course, and it focuses on the clinical communication criteria. Um, and it's absolutely free of cost. So, this is a course that I would encourage you to enroll in and complete. Um, and what I might do is quickly just share my screen so that you can see where to find it and sort of how to get there. So as you can see, I'm in the OET store. So get to the store by clicking the button, the little cart button. Once you do that, you'll see this, and you can just type in the search bar, booster course. You'll see the courses there. It's free. You add it to cart, and then you'll be prompted to complete a form, and it will take you to our student learning portal or candidate learning portal, where you'll see this course appear, be able to complete the course for free. All right. Um, I've got a question here from Chino on Facebook saying, please share some tips for Part B in reading. Definitely. So I'm just going to take off your question there and pull up my reading B tips that you can see there on screen. So the first tip is to approach each question individually. And that is because each Part B question is not related to the Part B questions aren't related to each other. Now, as soon as you finish one, try and put your mind into a fresh frame of mind and forget about what happened in the previous question. This will give you, the best sort of frame of mind to attempt your new question. The second tip is to look for evidence to support your choice. Very often, what happens is candidates get distracted by words. So they'll look for words, they'll see some words in the answer options, and then they will try and find those words in the text, or if they see those words in the text or similar words in the text, they might try and choose that as their answer. But actually, Part B questions are designed in such a way that you will find the answer when you engage meaningfully with the text. So the meaning, look at the meaning of the answer options and what's in the text rather than just trying to match words. And when you're practicing, try and find for every choice evidence for why that's correct for the correct option and why that choice is incorrect for incorrect options. And you'll find this evidence in the text because that's how the questions are designed. So try and do that when you're practicing. It will be a little bit more time consuming for you to do this in your practice sessions, but as you do it more, you will get better at it, and it'll almost become automatic when you come to test day. And then finally, spend a few extra seconds reading the sentence which you think you have that has the answer in more than once. These few extra seconds will help you, just confirm that answer. It will give you confidence about your answer. And if for some reason you've chosen something that doesn't make sense, then you can go back and correct it. Right. Got a question here from Nurse Jessie on YouTube. In the reading test, am I allowed to write on the question paper as a rough sketch? So Nurse Jessie, if you are taking the paper-based version of the test, which I assume you are, um, you are you will write your answers in the question paper. So for reading part A, you will be given a text booklet and then a booklet with the questions. Your answers will go in the question booklet. You can mark on both the text booklet and the question booklet. So you can make notes, mark, all of that, circle, underline. But remember the answer space where that is, make sure that it's very clear to the assessors that that is your final answer. So keep your notes very separate if you want to make any, and make sure that your answer is very clear. And then in your reading parts B and C, you need to circle in the lozenge or the little circle next to your chosen answer. So again, make sure that that is clear. Sometimes candidates don't completely fill in the circle, and that makes it hard for the computer to read. And so make sure you've done that well, and try and keep a little bit of a space, around that clear, so that there's no marking there. You can make your selections or your notes on the other side of the answer options, just to keep that side neat and clear for the computer to read. All right, I've got a question here from Melly on YouTube saying, I'm not good with handwriting, which I think I lost marks for that. For writing and listening, would you recommend the computer based test? So, Melly, I think a good test of this. So, first of all, let me reassure you that um, handwriting is not assessed in any of the subtests in OET. Um, all that you need to do is to make sure that your writing is clear and legible. It doesn't need to be uh, fancy, it just needs to be clear and legible to the assessors. A good test of this is maybe give your writing to someone who has never seen your writing before and see if they can read it and clearly understand it. If they can't, then maybe if you think you could practice improving it, do that. Or yes, like you said, you could opt for the computer based test. Now, remember when you're opting for a test mode, so whether you're choosing paper based or computer based, make sure you're comfortable with that mode. So if typing comes easily to you, and working on a screen comes easily naturally, then absolutely, that would be a great choice for you. But if it's something that's not natural, you're really slow with typing and you need to improve more those sorts of skills, then it's a choice that you kind of make between working on your handwriting to make it more clear, or working on those skills to get better at them and more comfortable with them. Take a sample test on the computer, or on our website. We have our sample tests page with links to sample tests on computer, and I'm just putting that in chat so that you kind of get an idea of what they look like and how they work. All right. All right. So I've got a question here from, I think this was part of Anna's earlier question, and she's commented saying struggling in reading. And I think there is perhaps another question on reading. So I'm going to answer that. So if you're struggling in reading, um, first of all, you've identified that that's an area that you need to work on, which is a great start. One of the tips that I can share, and I'm going to share a resource as well. One of the tips I would like to share is, first of all, you know, reading, OET reading, are what you read in the OET test are all things that you are very used to reading in your healthcare workplace. So you're very used to reading dosage charts, treatment pathways. You're very used to reading memos or emails, maybe guidelines, handbook from your nurse's handbook, or your profession's handbook. These are all things you're very familiar with already. Maybe you haven't read them in English, but you know what kinds of things they contain. So, first of all, just be confident in that, and then try and make an effort to incorporate reading more of these sorts of things into your daily habit, into your daily routine. It's not the most this is not a tip that everybody wants to hear, because, well, isn't it obvious that if you want to improve reading, you do more reading? But it is a very real, it is a tip that actually works, because when you incorporate reading into your routine, you get more comfortable with reading these texts in English, and that's where you'll see a great improvement in your score. Also practicing reading for 40 minutes straight. You might not be able to do that, but at least a couple of times a week, or maybe even once a week, how much ever time you have, sort of giving and building up your stamina to read for that long is a really good idea as well. So I'm going to put into chat our reading week playlist, and there's lots of tips on how you can improve and build a daily reading habit into your routine, and also each part of the test, what skills are needed there, how do you improve these skills. This is all great stuff in the reading week playlist, so do bookmark that and check it out after the session. All right. Right. So we've got a question here, last question from Chinu. Part C presentation is a bit difficult. Could you please share some more information on it? And so, Chinu, I'm going to share with you our listening week playlist, which I'm just going to put in chat, which is, the exact same things that I just explained for reading, but done for listening. And there you will have lots of advice on how you can improve part C, presentations, interviews, how you can improve that bit. So do check that out after the session. All right, so thank you for joining me today. It has been lovely answering your questions, and we look forward to answering your questions. If you haven't had the opportunity to ask a question today, or if I haven't answered one of your questions, you can join me on Monday, December the 15th at the same time. And on those times, at those times there on the screen. Um, you can also contact us via Facebook and put in your question there for us to answer. All right. Thank you very much. Until next time. Bye for now.